for the purposes of the people who are looking at this panel is about our Outer Limits DVD video commentary crew. And a better crew could not be hoped for. And we're talking about 2 DVD releases here. We're talking about the Kino Lorber Blu-rays that came out in 2018 for season 1 and season 2. And laterally, those were ported onto another set by Viavision in Australia in whatever last year was, 2019. So we all provided, my God, how many? I mean, there are 49 episodes of The Outer Limits. We did something like 45 commentaries. Is that right?
Wow.
Is that a record of some kind?
I wish it was, but it was like that whole thing with signed limited editions. When I did one once, I thought we had set a world record for having more signatures in one book than anything, and we were immediately crushed into dust. And I bet Craig knows. There's probably a Twilight Zone one out there somewhere that's got 150 commentaries on it.
Oh, sure.
Right?
Yeah, because episodes have more than one.
Yeah. We have multiples on many episodes, and these are our prime contributors right now who did most of the audio commentaries. And we have here Steve Mitchell. You're in my upper left, so I'm starting with you.
Oh, okay. I'm in the center on my screen, so.
And
you're to the right of me, right?
And tell everyone who you are, Steve.
Well,
half an hour or less.
No, I'll do it in a lot less. I'm a writer, producer, director. I did the documentary feature King Cohen recently, which David appears in.
I've heard of it.
Yeah, and then I've produced a lot of DVD special features, and I do a lot of commentary tracks. With maybe only Gary is the only person I've ever done a track with. But I also
we'll get to that narrative, though. We'll get to that narrative.
I also produced the Thriller DVD set, and I think that's where I met Tim. And did we know each other before then, David? I can't remember.
We may have had a handshake before then, but the first time we really worked with each other was on Thriller, and we will actually start with that in a little bit. Now, Mr. Tim Lucas, to my immediate right, hero of Video Watchdog, among other things. Please describe yourself in 30 words or less.
I'm a writer. I'm all kinds of a writer. I'm a film critic, film
novelist,
historian, as they call them. A novelist, of course. That's my favorite way to refer to myself as a writer. And I've been doing this since the early 1970s. So not that long after these episodes were first broadcast, strangely enough. I'm the author of Mario Bava, All the Colors of the Dark.
Which is a really large book on Mario Bava.
A 12-pound book. And then on the far other end of the spectrum, a monograph about the movie Spirits of the Dead, directed by Roger Vadim.
That's recent, though. That's recent, isn't it?
Yes, that came out last year. And I've got 184 issues and 2 special editions of Video Watchdog behind me. So
for all of you subscribers out there, or former subscribers of Video Watchdog, to my next column, this is like one of those class high school pictures, is Mr. Gary Girani, who in many ways can be blamed for starting all of this with a book in 1977 called Fantastic Television, which I'm sure you've heard of. Gary, give us a little about you, please.
Yeah, okay. I'm a writer of nonfiction and fiction. Fantastic Television was my first book, but I'm still doing them. I've got a book on the great movie poster painter Joe Smith coming out this year, The Art of Joe Smith, and I'm finishing a documentary on the great film and TV composer Billy Goldenberg. It's called Romantic Mysticism, the music of Billy Goldenberg. And, I do the usual kind of stuff, writing articles about the Outer Limits and doing commentaries and that kind of thing.
Reba Wisner, Dr. Reba Wisner, I may point out, the only other person on the planet besides me who has written an entire book on the Outer Limits, unless we count that French guy, and we really don't count that French guy.
There was a French guy?
There was a French guy named Didier Liardet, who did a book in French about the Outer Limits, but it was very much like those foreign edition monster movie books that we see that are entirely based on books we wrote. as references.
Right.
So, you know, you look in the index and you go, hey, wait a minute, these are all books by Tom Weaver, you know, so it's no, DDA, he did a pretty beautiful book just for French readers on the Outer Limits, but it was very, 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 very basic. Reba, however, did an entire book on just the music of the Outer Limits, which is subtitled The Outer Limits and the Aural Imagination. And you just moved to Georgia.
I did. I just started a position. I moved from New York. I just started a position at Columbus State University in the Schroep School of Music. I am the lone musicologist. I am an assistant professor. I wrote the book literally on the music of the Outer Limits, as well as the music of the Twilight Zone. I have one of those out. If all goes well, in about 24 days or so, my third book will be out on music and the atomic bomb in Cold War television, so that's exciting. And if Gary doesn't cut me out, I will also be appearing in his documentary on Billy Goldenberg.
Oh my God.
You have not been cut out, and believe me, your reactions and your discussions about his music were wonderful. I mean, I've just been reviewing all of this, and I got to say, you gave it just what I wanted. So, hey,
Thank you.
fantastic, Reba.
Thank
Mr.
you.
Craig Beam, you're up, sir.
Yeah, what he said. I'm a blogger, a podcaster, and apparently now I'm a film historian. Thanks.
You are absolutely a film historian because the blogs and podcasts to which Craig is referring are all Outer Limits or Twilight Zone oriented. We all of us have at least one foot in the Twilight Zone all the time anyway. So in order to do this, you know, in order to do the one thing, you have to do the other thing. So, but Gary's another one of our audio commentators on this set, and he rescued my ass more than once when I called him up, like literally at the last minute, saying, "Can you do an episode commentary by like tomorrow morning? Would be good." You know.
Well, we somehow managed to pull all that off, though. It was pretty amazing.
And we are, I know Tim's in Ohio, Gary's in Oregon, Reba's in Georgia now, and the rest of us are left coast people.
California, LA.
Yeah, well, Sherman Oaks, California.
Where it all used to happen anyway.
Mm-hmm.
And once upon a time, one wonders how this starts. How do you come to be flagged down to do audio commentaries for DVD releases for stuff that you were presumably an expert on, which we all are now, whether we like it or not. So, and I'm gonna.
I can actually answer that. I can actually answer that question.
You go first, then.
How it happens? It's real simple. I had never done any of this sort of stuff before, but when Image Entertainment was putting out the old Combat TV series, which is a favorite of mine as well, my then partner Steve Rubin said, we ought to call these guys up and see if we can produce some extras. This was back in the day when people were spending some money, although at the time Image wasn't. But we literally called up and say, hey, do you have anybody producing special features and commentaries for that show? And they said no. So we literally volunteered. And then, remarkably, they said, okay. And that was how I got into the business, basically by asking my way in. And then ultimately, because I'm a big fan of 60s television, well, TV in general, that's how I got to do Thriller, and that's how I brought some of these guys in. So sometimes all you got to do is ask.
What was the learning curve like from being thrown into that end of the pool? It's like, well, you're doing supplements, because I know I've produced DVD supplements myself unwittingly sometimes. You know, it's like the thing comes out and you have a credit on it as a producer. And he said, well, all I did was actually shoot some footage and somebody else put it together. And I'd like to ask, I'd also like to ask Tim, how did you first come to do this?
Well, I think it was mostly as a result of having written a 2-part article about Mario Bava for Fangoria magazine. So that's even less than having a book out there. It's just that I had written, I had taken the essence of the book that I was writing about Mario Bava and still researching at that time, And that sort of gave me the credibility to be approached to do something like this. I was approached by a fellow at that was at Image Entertainment also. And he asked me if I could do it, and I didn't know if I could technologically. And I happened to mention it to my friend, the late Michael Lennick, who was up in Toronto, Ontario. And he said, well, why don't you take a road trip up here and I'll record it for you. So I sort of pretty much did by instinct things the same way that I do now. I sort of went through the film scene by scene and mapped out what should be discussed during each scene, and timed it out and knew that I could sort of speak my way through it. And even though now I will record things more, I have much more freedom with editing a piece now because I do my own editing. But back then it was all in Michael's hands, and he had me sitting in a chair in front of his television, and he would be playing a VHS tape for me that wasn't even a time-coded copy or anything. It was just something that I'd recorded off of television. And I would read my way through it, and he would stop me occasionally and say, do you want to do that line again? And he was serving as a producer through the whole thing. And we did 2 commentaries. The other one was for Mario Bava's Kill Baby Kill. And we did those within the space of a week, the first day and also the last day of my trip. And then we forwarded the tapes on to them. I think he was recording everything onto a blank video cassette from his system.
That's good. That was good for audio, as I discovered when I was recording radio, because you can record for, like, if you really need to, you can record for 8 hours straight without cutting.
Yeah. So they just edited the commentaries on their end, and only the first one came out. They had a ownership dispute problem with the other movie, so that it didn't come out at that time. But that's how I got into it. And as a matter of fact, because I was doing audio commentaries for Kino Lorber, they originally approached me with this idea of doing The Outer Limits. And I said, well, you have to talk to David Scow because he's the guy. And so I gave them your contact information, and then you assembled us all together like the Avengers.
Oh God, look what that started. I know that Tim.
Who Wonder Woman is.
Well, I know that Tim by and large scripts his commentaries, and so does Craig. Craig has got maybe I don't know, going into like doing audio commentaries, I would think Craig had the most experience of any of us because of his podcasts. He was used to presenting things in an oral manner.
Mm-hmm.
And when did you start podcasting, Craig?
2016, I think it was. So not that long ago.
Yeah, but how many podcasts, and hours of podcasts does that amount to by now?
Not as many as it should. I'm not terribly prolific. Reba is frequently a guest. She can tell you it's very infrequently. 75 hours, maybe.
Mm-hmm. Maybe. It's interesting because the way Craig does his podcast is that he presents it as an actual episode of a show. So he will go back and cut it in certain ways. He will add music. He will add sound effects. He will add comic bits. He will do everything else. So it really is a bit of programming, and not just somebody talking like I do. Because once I get started on audio commentary, I won't shut up, as most of you may know. So to jump back ahead of what Tim said. Well, first of all, I want to get to Reba because I wanted to ask Reba. Had you ever been asked to do anything like this before? And was anything like this before, except maybe presenting things in front of an audience, an academic audience?
Yeah, no, I have, other than appearing on Craig's podcast, I had never really done anything in terms of trying to gear my Outer Limitsy stuff to non-academics.
Let me bust in on you for now. You're there. Are you not doing a revised edition of your book? No. Yes. I've got it wrong. Oh wait, that's me. I'm doing a revised edition.
You're always doing a revised
Wait.
edition of your book.
Oh, wait. You mean
That's what you
this
live
book right
for.
here? Yeah. Okay. Anyway, I'm sorry. Please go ahead.
No worries. I mean, I've done things like pre-concert talks and stuff like that, but I've never really done anything like an audio commentary. So I was very excited when you asked me to do this because it gave me a chance to really kind of get in and talk about what was happening. The challenge for me is making sure that it's intelligible to people without any musical knowledge, because there's a lot of technical stuff happening. And I can easily go down the rabbit hole of chords and things like that, but I didn't want to do that. So I wanted to make sure there was something that people could understand with all of that information that I had for it. So it was a lot of fun to actually do, and to watch the episode without any music as I was recording it, for me was a little bit strange, because I had so many hours watching these episodes and listening to the music, and now it's silent and I'm blabbing my mouth. And it was just very interesting to me, because in my head, and I don't know if any of you have this experience when you watch something that you know really well, you hear the music in your head. Or if you're watching something where I've been on this old 60s Western kick recently, don't ask me why, but I'll be watching an episode of Have Gun Will Travel, and I'll hear something like Bernard Herrmann's The Airlock, which will appear in like tons of Twilight Zone episodes, and like my brain will locate that point in the Twilight Zone episode where this cue happens. And as I'm talking, I'm trying to turn the music in my head off because then again, I kind of spiral out of control. I tried to script my commentaries, so I didn't want to go too far off. But for me, that was the challenge, was watching where I was, talking where I was supposed to be talking, and not veering off as I'm hearing the cues in my head.
There's a whole arc to the way audio commentaries were done, because there's a whole learning curve to the experience. And I don't know about everybody else, it's like one time or another, I'm sure you've all been stuck in a room. You have to do a commentary on something and there's no audio playback, and it derails you, you know. And then they learned the art of having this thing at a subdued volume in the background on a DVD, you know, or something like that. But to go all the way back to the beginning, how did this happen and how has it changed? Once upon a time, their Image Entertainment had the bad taste to decide to do Thriller as a DVD set. And that's where Steve comes in, Gary comes in, I come in. Now, Steve and Gary and I are we're sitting in a booth with an engineer. You know, we have playback, we can stop, we can insert things as we want to. And it's like, flash forward 5 or 6 years and we get to the first season of The Outer Limits of Kino Lorber. And so here's a microphone, kid, you're on your own, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, and I had no idea how to do this. I don't know if Gary's setup was not the most sophisticated one in the world.
Hey,
I have no idea.
Done.
I have no idea what Tim's setup is, and I assumed that Craig's setup was superior to anything that we had. So we'll see. Yeah, well, I've got the same goddamn. You got that microphone from Kino Lorber, didn't you?
No, but they told me which one to buy.
Well, see, this is what they sent me, right? Okay, so
Yeah.
Yeah, I got one of those too.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I don't know.
When
I don't know what.
The Outer Limits, when we did the Outer Limits, we were kind of a bit more improvisational with the technology.
But what they didn't understand at that point, and what Steve and Craig are familiar with, at least, and I don't know what Reba's setup is like, but I had to go. Not only was I behind on the audio commentaries, and so it's like a crunch period. This is like January of 2018. I forget, Craig, wasn't it? Something like that. And it's like, I have to find an audio program that I can record and capture and make sure I don't lose everything that I've just done. Would that I had the ability Tim has to edit, right? I had no idea. So I called up a friend of mine, a composer named Joe Bashara, who does soundtracks for movies like Insidious and Sinister, and he comes over at about 12:30 at night, 1 o'clock in the morning, and we're sitting there and we're trolling the internet for a program we can use. And we tried one and we were on it for an hour, and Joe, the music extra, with a soundboard the size of my house, right? He's sitting there and he hits a button and he goes, what just happened? Where did that go? No, this isn't going to work. So that's another hour that goes by and the clock is ticking, right? And so finally we found one program, and I was able to record 5 minutes of commentary and look at it on a little waveform soundtrack and go back and play it again. I said, I think now if I start where I stopped, I can keep going, but I'm not smart enough to edit. So if I blow it, I have to go back and re-perform everything from the breach point. I did that 137 times on the first commentary, which took me 10 hours to record.
Wow.
And the next day I have to do another one. This went on 6 days in a row. I literally did one of those commentaries a day, 6 days in a row. And I don't know how fast or slow you guys were on your commentaries, and maybe y'all can talk about that a little bit. And Craig, you start.
It was...
Craig, for some reason, you're not as loud as everybody else on my playback. Is that your mic, or you're just not feeding back or whatever? I could just turn you up, I guess.
You can turn your volume up on your Zoom, I think.
Yes, you can.
Is it everyone or just Dave? Am I quiet to everybody?
Yeah, you're fairly subdued.
Yeah, you're kind of muted.
Well, you know, I'm pretty calm right now.
Craig is extremely mellow. All right, we'll just rough it. Go ahead.
Maybe I can. I'm just trying to keep my mic out of the shot, but maybe it just needs to come. My memories of that whole thing, it's all a blur, because it seems like, though I feel like we had months of notice, nothing really happened until like the last few weeks. As far as a learning curve, I mean, I was already doing the podcast. So on a technical level, I already kind of knew what I was doing. What was tough for me was having nothing to fall back on but my voice, because with my podcasting, like Dave described, I mean, there's all kinds of other stuff going on. There's a lot of sound effects and music and all this other stuff. I had never just recorded myself for an hour straight. So that was really tough for me. And I think part of that's probably maybe why I ended up in that crunch period, because I was really kind of afraid of just kind of going out there naked, so to speak. And with nothing else, with nothing to hide behind. So that was tough for me. But yeah, it was crazy. And I remember not sleeping for 3 days straight to finish my tracks.
But isn't it kind of exhilarating when you get done with it?
It is.
It's a great relief when you're finally finished, no question, especially if you're doing one where you put so much into it. It's like, wow, thank God that's over. Mm-hmm. As proud as you are of it, it does take a lot out of you, no question.
Reba, what do you say?
Well,
how weird was it for you?
It was weird. It was also kind of terrible timing, because at that point, I think I was teaching 7 classes at 4 universities in 2 states while trying to put these commentaries together. And then inevitably things happen during the recording process. Some of you know I have 2 dogs. They're wonderful. One snores like a rusty chainsaw, and she likes to be around me at all times. And so apparently my commentary for one episode must have put her to sleep, because she started snoring really loud, and then I had to go back and re-record that whole point.
Oh no.
Because as I listened to it when I played it back, I didn't realize that the microphone actually picked it up. And it did. So I had to go back and I had to edit. And it's like a whole like 10, 15 minute chunk of like me and dog snores.
So that's
like, ah.
That's the unexpurgated version, right? Now I'm gonna save Gary and Steve for the next part, because I want to jump to Tim right away, because Tim strikes me as somebody who is better prepared than anybody for this, because the history of Video Watchdog is the history of audio commentaries, basically. It's that level of detail. Do you agree? Do you not agree? Was it weird for you? How did you feel?
Well, for me, I mean, I had been doing them for different companies since 1999. So I had a long history behind me of doing it and trying out different ways of doing it that I would reject over time as being unproductive. But when the assignment came to me, when the when the assignment came to me to I think the first one that I really asked for was the whatchamacallit, decay of particles. I can never remember the title.
It's not it's production and decay of strange particles.
Strange particles. And
Not
for
that I
some
know that
reason,
you-
I felt really keen about doing that one, and it had a lot to do with how I discovered the show. Which,
But what a surprise that commentary was, because that's not a commentary somebody buying an Outer Limits box set would expect to get right out of the box, and the reasons for it were even more fun. I like those oddball, off in the corner inspirations.
Exactly. I mean, that was actually the first episode that I saw as an adult. You know, when I first discovered the show in 1963, when it came on the air, I was drawn in by monsters. I was 7 years old. And so the show was really my education in what science fiction was as a genre, you know, that it wasn't just about space travel. It was about communication. It was about imagining things that you hope do not happen, and the things that you hope do happen. And you know, it was also about paranoia, the things that you feared that were, you know, on view in societies you saw it at that time. It's a great time capsule of the period that those episodes were made in. I think they capture the spirit of that period incredibly well.
And I think just look at how TV morphed just in the year after that show went off the air. It became, you know, flat TV lighting, flat TV style. It was very rare and very temporary.
Yes.
Period.
Very much. And it really does still, I think, to me, it's the quintessential black and white television series. I just can't imagine the other.
I would agree.
At all.
I would agree.
You know, so it had a lot to do with cinematography.
And music.
And you know, it really did establish my preferences for what science fiction films are from that point on. I mean, it's like I love Chris Marker's La Jetée, and I'm sure that's because I was initiated into science fiction by The Outer Limits.
Yeah, it's the man who was never born.
Yeah, exactly.
Basically.
So when I did my commentaries,
finish that thought.
In terms of when I did my commentaries, I mean, I was sort of already up to speed because I'm sure that I had just finished an assignment for Kino Lorber and was ready to jump back in. So I don't think anything took longer than 4 days to do, and I'm sure that at least one of them was just a couple of days. But that was basically the length where I could just sort of go through it and then, you know, write it as if I was talking through my fingers, so that I would have a record of everything that crossed my mind, and then add detail to that on top from your book and from other sources.
Well, I would not have embarked upon this dark path had I not been sucked into the Thriller DVD set. I believe it began with a phone call from Gary.
Yeah.
Because
sure that is how it began.
I need Gary and Steve, if you guys don't mind, I need Gary and Steve to quickly tell the story of how we got wrapped up in this, because it was supposed to be a quickie. It was supposed to be a couple of weeks. And suddenly we got an additional month to do more. Can you guys tell that story real quickly?
Okay, Steve, why don't you start?
I'll go first. All right. Well, I was approached by Nathaniel Thompson to produce it because I had a relationship with guys up at Image, and I had suggested it. I don't know, Gary, was it six months earlier or a year earlier or something like that?
Yeah, we've been talking about it.
And Gary sort of helped me make the case to them that it was worth doing, and they said, yeah. And I discovered a couple of things. One, if you're going to do any of these projects, it's really a good, if you can be in-house to suggest them, it's a lot easier than being out-house. And
Outhouse.
well, you're on one side of the desk or the other, and sometimes that's a big difference. But anyway, they called me, and then I said, well, how the hell am I going to do this? And I figured, well, I would want to get as many people who were actors or people who worked on the show. if as possible, which was no easy task with the people that I got. Gary kind of came on board and he talked about all of you guys, you know, people who were sort of professional fans, authors, journalists. And somehow we just kept getting more people on this thing. It just kind of expanded. What did we do, Gary? About 27, 28 commentary tracks?
Oh, God, yeah, we did a ton of them.
And you know, had we had a little more time, I think we could have done maybe a few more. But Image was going through some seismic changes at the time. And right down towards the end, they were saying, get it done, get it done, get it done. And what happened was, I'll be honest now on the record, I didn't think it was actually going to come out. I know David was saying, when's it going to come out? When's it going to come out? And I had to sort of not lie, but not sort of commit to anything. Because until it came out, there was some question in my mind that the company would be around to issue it. But we finished it. I'm very proud of the work everybody did. That's where I met Tim. Tim sort of showed up one day and it was like, oh, great. I think Ernest Dickerson came along too that day.
Tim was in LA for like 2 days or something.
Yeah.
And I said, hey, Tim, why don't we, you know, and the funny thing was that we dragged in Alan Brennert. We dragged in Larry Blameyer. Which
Alan's a friend of mine, yeah.
Shows. But the thing is that none of us drove automobiles. And Steve would have to go around and pick up Gary and then pick up Tim and I at the metro station, at the Universal Studios metro station, and then go to Starbucks.
I actually felt like an elementary school bus driver, you know, because I had a bunch of really enthusiastic kids in the car, but they all needed lots of coffee before we got to Image. But somehow we got to get the tracks on the record, and somehow we managed to finish some of the editing even after Image had literally physically shrunk down as a company. They did the rooms that they had that we recorded in literally were gone. That part of the operation was gone before we officially finished. But you know, I remember calling John Burlingame one day because who better to talk about, Jerry Goldsmith and Morton Stevens on that show. And, he said, "You're going to do it with me?" And I said, "Well, yeah, sure." I lost sleep that night. I was so worried about being able to hang in there with John Burlingame. And I mentioned that to him before we started. He said, "Don't be silly." And I said, "Oh, okay. All right. I won't be silly." And we had a great time. And that set, I think, proved maybe to you, David, that it could be done, that you could get a lot of people together to do a really exhaustive bunch of commentaries. And I'm glad that's where I met all you guys.
Yeah, most of the ones I did, I was Gary's co-pilot.
And we did some really good ones together. My memory of that situation was it was very, very strange. It seemed like for a while we only had like a week and a half, right?
Yeah.
And I desperately said, well, we've got to get Pigeons from Hell and the Cheaters. We've got to get commentary. So I rushed in as prepared as I could be, and I did them as well as I could. I really was pleased with the way Pigeons from Hell came out. The Robert Howard people were very happy with it as well. So we did pull that off. It was makeshift, but you talk about Image going under. Right after Thriller, they did the Blu-rays on The Twilight Zone. And that was the very last project they did in terms of the old regime at Image. And talk about being there while they were removing all the equipment. I'm doing my commentaries even as they're moving computer equipment away. And that was the very, very, very end. So the fact that we did Thriller and they wound up doing this beautiful Blu-ray release of The Twilight Zone also with a ton of commentaries. The fact that we even got that stuff done is pretty amazing.
I remember it as being in two phases. There was the phase we went in on initially when you didn't have to panic and just cherry pick as fast as you could.
Yeah.
And then we had a little time. We were able to do some more. And then they gave us more time, or we won more time somehow.
I pushed
during
for
that
a little
during
more
that period
time.
of time, I'm sorry,
I
during
pushed
that
for it.
period of time, that's when we got things we didn't have for the set, like the sizzle reel for the
Yeah,
to
we
sell
should
the show to the
really
network.
mention Mr. Michael Hyatt, who's another film historian and a film restorer. And he's really the guy that had all that incredible rare material, the trailers for next week's shows, things I really
Yeah.
hadn't seen since back in the early 60s. So yeah, we were lucky to get a lot of the great extras.
Michael, who incidentally also did an Outer Limits commentary with you on the special one.
Well, Michael was brought in that desperate last week that we've been talking about, where I did about 5 of them in 1 week with Michael's help. You came in, we did another one, went with Michael.
Because
with the two of us.
Gary didn't have a microphone.
Oh, God, it was crazy. I don't know how the hell we did it, but we did it. Listen, our love for the Outer Limits always kind of pushes us through, whatever the hell it is, right?
How many Blu-ray?
Was that the same week that we did the Inheritors 2-parter?
Actually, I think that was late because that was season 2.
It's season 2.
We had
Oh,
a little
okay.
more time on that, yeah. But that was when we did Zanti Misfits.
Yes.
Yeah.
I've got to mention, David, that the day that we did the commentary with Ernest Dickerson for the 2 episodes that we did.
Oh yeah.
It was the premature burial and
The premonition, I think. Was that right? The
no,
premonition?
the Grim
No,
Reaper. The Grim Reaper.
Yeah.
But I remember that was a great day for me because I was actually like in Los Angeles or Chatsworth in a recording booth with a famous director beside me, a famous writer beside me, and we were all flying by the seat of our pants through this recording. And except for one other commentary that I did out there once, all of my days of commentary have been here in my office alone in Question Mark, Ohio, speaking into my own microphone. So it gave me an idea of the glamour that people actually associate with this job, which is largely illusory.
Yeah, glamour in quotes, Tim.
I don't know how glamorous Image actually
No,
was.
I had a
what
lot of
the
fun
hell?
because I was able to go in and do a commentary with my pal Alan Brennert,
Yeah.
and for yours truly, Jack the Ripper. Yes, this has turned into a thriller panel, ladies and gentlemen.
I was about to say, yeah, what the heck?
No, we're getting there. We're getting there, Gary. It's all relevant. And Marcus Acree came in for one. Brennert came in for one. I got Blameyer to come in for 4 of them because that gave us an excuse to talk about the thriller westerns. And it was, so it was fun in that. But yes, most of the fun is seat of the pants fun. And you mentioned the Image Entertainment Blu-ray set, Gary, on the Twilight Zone. You just caused me to remember that the first time I walked into Image to record a commentary was in 1990. I recorded a commentary for Leatherface Texas Chainsaw Massacre 3 with Greg Nicotero, the commentary that is lost to this day because it was only on the Laserdisc.
Oh.
So, but Craig, who I depend upon for all of these things, could tell me how many Blu-ray sets are there of the Twilight Zone now? My God.
Yeah, right.
There's so they first did the season by season releases, and then I feel like they did another kind of a cheapy release where it was the episodes with none of the extras, and then more recently they've done, I don't know, 1 or 2 different complete series sets. And then they also did something, I think, in the UK, not here, for the 60th anniversary last year. But I don't have it, so I can't speak to it. But
yeah, well, the only reason I bring that up is because by comparison, when we were doing this stuff for the Outer Limits, it's like we had the definite sensation that this was the only time this was ever going to be done, right?
It was really do or die, wasn't it?
Hey, but we did it. We did it, and it turned out really well. I
And
mean, God,
we're
it'd be
still building
wonderful
on
if
it.
we could eventually see Thriller as a Blu-ray, the way we got Outer Limits as a Blu-ray, but I'm not holding my breath.
I'm not holding my breath.
I
Hopefully
don't think they're going to.
come out and we can continue to do a couple of extra commentaries each new time it comes.
Yeah, our voices are aging along with the TV show, right?
Well, no, I think it's important, and this is important to point out in terms of the Viavision set that was just done for Australia, because they had contacted Tim, I believe, first, and I asked Josh Hibbard, who was in charge of the program, because we had very little time to get this together, and I asked Josh, well, can we add stuff? And at the same time, we did a couple of extra commentaries. Tim did one, Craig did one, I did one, and I found a recording of Leslie Stevens reading promos for The Outer Limits as the control voice. And we added things that the Kino Lorber didn't have, like a still gallery. What else? Oh, in the time between the two DVD sets, a guy named Dave Rash uncovered a copy of the script to The Forms of Things Unknown that was written 6 months before The Forms of Things Unknown, which I always thought, and to my consternation and Tim's, because he did the commentary, it's like, wait a minute, the guy who wrote the teleplay, Joe Stefano, he didn't whip it all together in December of '63. He cannibalized a screenplay he had written the previous July and made it into this two-parter. The original version of the script had an actual Outer Limits monster in it. It was actually called The Thing Unknown in that version of the script. And it was like, so, and I'm also very proud of the fact that the disc commentaries across the board by all of you overall all have stuff that's not in my book. Thank you. Thank you.
How is that even possible?
Yeah, no
For
kidding.
you completists.
I'm sorry. What's going on?
No, you were talking. I interrupted
I'm
you.
just saying, how is it even possible we had stuff that isn't in your book because it's so
Oh, you wouldn't believe it.
Well, it's
I'll
point of
give you
view.
for
It's
instance.
point of view stuff. I mean, part of what makes commentaries interesting is the point of view of who's commentating on it. What do their observations, their thoughts, their especially about things like filmmaking, which is a little bit more of a specialty of mine. When I do my tracks for Kino as well, I like to talk about the what to try and understand what the filmmakers are doing, technically as well as creatively. I mean, Tim did a Zanti track, and Gary and I did a Zanti track, and they couldn't be more different in a sense. Partly because Gary and I, we just sort of had the buddy kind of old school pals watching an episode sort of thing going. But both tracks I think are very valid on their own, and they bring different stuff, and that's what a good commentary in my mind is. When I started producing these things, I realized very quickly being entertaining and informative is always the goal. Never be boring, always have something to say. Keep the viewer engaged. And my trick, and for me it was I just sort of fell backwards into it, was somebody at Image once said to me, says, "You're just having a conversation with a friend." And so whenever I do any of my tracks, I feel like I'm having a conversation with a friend and try and keep
let me follow
engaged
up on that,
in that way.
Yeah. No, I was kind of joking before. Obviously, David's book is so thorough, it's really hard for anyone to come up with additional information. But
It's
Steve
the Bible.
is actually correct. Everybody brings their own personality to a commentary. I may see something in a story that somebody else doesn't, and vice versa. And all of a sudden, someone brings this point out, and you go, "Oh my God, I never even thought about that before." And you get an additional burst of enthusiasm and happiness that you've discovered something new about something you already loved. So yeah, each commentary it's like fingerprints. Everyone is an individual. And
Well, here's a for instance. It's
we've
like
done some amazing ones.
Gary and Reba both did tracks for, was it Cry of Silence?
Yes. An episode that required multiple tracks.
Did you guys listen to each other's tracks?
We agreed ahead of time that we were going to do things differently, right?
All right, even better.
Yeah, I mean, Reba obviously is the music person, so her track really focused more on that. I tried to stay away from the music and deal with other aspects of it. It's an interesting episode, no matter how you look at it, but...
Somebody else ask a question.
I want to ask Reba a question.
Yeah.
Is that okay? Reba, I wanted to ask you, and please forgive me if I missed this in your book, but the theme to The Outer Limits, okay? When that theme was written, now we know it's made up of some cues that came from Stony Burke, and it's a combination of a couple of things. But I've got to believe the main theme, which is dun, 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 was written for The Outer Limits. And here's my question, Reba. At the time when Frontieri wrote that, do you happen to know what the name of the show was? Was it Please Stand By? Was it The Outer Limits? Or was it Beyond Control? Because the notes of that theme fit Beyond Control. And I was just wondering, you know, if you knew that, what the deal was there.
So I think that, well, first of all, the theme came from a very specific episode of Stony Burke, which now every time I watch an episode of Stony Burke, because I actually do, it's very odd to hear the I'm glad I'm not the only one. It's odd to hear that music that you originally know of as being from The Outer Limits in this Western. And so Frontieri actually said that he wrote the theme to The Outer Limits in 12 minutes. But now that we know that this existed in an episode of Stony Burke, we know that that's not actually true. As far as I know, when he wrote that music, he wrote it specifically for Stony Burke. And it was probably Please Stand By, but I'm not entirely sure.
Yeah, it's so hard because the theme is a combination of a few different cues.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
You know, and the only thing that I could ever sort of figure out, everything is, or we're just guessing at this point, was that the dun, 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 dun I thought was original, and everything else came from Stony Burke, unless we find the dun, 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 dun in a Stony Burke as well. But I thought that seemed to be the actual original music he wrote as an Outer Limits theme. And again, I just was wondering what if the show was called Beyond Control when he wrote that music. Who knows?
Yeah, I mean, I tried multiple times and in multiple different ways, to the point where he probably thought I was a stalker, to get in touch with Frontieri and get him to talk to me before he passed. He wouldn't.
Oh, really?
So I tried emails, I tried phone, I tried snail mail letters, I was literally stalker behavior. And he wouldn't respond.
But it's not entirely your fault, Reba. Frontieri was not the most pleasant man on the planet.
So I've heard from a few other people who
and we should point out that since that happened, we assisted in buying a huge amount of his paperwork, which I would be willing to bet somewhere in that paperwork is a piece of music with Please Stand By written on it.
Are we talking about Elizalde's papers?
Yes.
Yep. I didn't see anything.
Damn it.
I went through them. I spent hours and hours and hours going through them. And I took copious pictures of what was there, and I didn't find anything. I mean, I found some cool stuff, like a whole, I want to say it was maybe a 24-inch long piece of paper with the music breakdown for how the music would work in a season.
Oh, yeah, you sent me a copy of it, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, some really cool things. Found the score for The Unknown, which was also really cool. Yeah. But that wasn't there.
I would like to know if during this process of working on these two sets, which took us basically a year, right? I mean, we were doing season 1 commentaries in January and season 2 in August of 2018. I would like to know from each of you if there was a moment in this process where it just lit up for you, where you were incredibly pleased with what you were doing, and you can all fight over who goes first.
I really loved working on the Invisibles episode, which is probably my favorite of the episodes.
Because I think it shows. I think it shows when that happens for you.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure I think it was just my attention. I was rediscovering the dialogue in the show. And again, my memory's not going to let me come up with it, but there's that wonderful speech that George McCready gives to the assembled outcasts of society in that little cabin when he's talking about these pitiful shreds of nothingness that are going through the, and they all ended up here somewhere, and now we're all, in its service. And he was
Sick,
just
nameless nuclei, right?
Beautiful, beautiful. That's it. But
all shot in the widest lens possible.
Yes, and it was really, discovering the very close attention that was paid to all of these little details in the dialogue, in the music, in the cinematography. And they really do come together in a real galvanized form. Any one of these contributors, whether it's Gert Oswald or Leslie Stevens or Joe Stefano or Dominic Frontiere or the cinematographer, I can't, Comrade Hall.
Oh yeah, him.
Individually, you could say any one of them is the auteur of the program, but they all are. Incredibly, they all are. And sometimes you can move out one of those modules and put in someone like Paul Stanley, and it's just amazing that it still holds up. The strength of that creative bond gives each of those shows a personality. So that's what it was for me. I mean, realizing how strong the show was from all directions.
I wish if I could time travel or advise my 8-year-old self to get his shit together and go down Sunset Boulevard, I would love to have hung around those offices on Sunset when they were frantically trying to assemble all these shows at the last minute. That would have been my Wish Foundation gig. Craig, what about you?
I feel like with season 1, I was really just fumbling around. I found that having been doing the podcast for a couple of years was not any sort of preparation.
Really?
Other than the technical end of it, like knowing how to record myself and how to edit it.
Well, I sure as hell didn't know how to do any of that shit.
I feel like it was the season 2 episodes where I really felt like really comfortable with it. And I've never really gone back and listened to them, I have a hard time revisiting things that I've done, but
you're not alone.
I've listened to them.
Someday I will listen to those commentary tracks again and I will cringe.
Craig's in particular are great drive time listens. I'll just put that out there for you. But when you were doing it, in the process of doing it, it lit up for you in the second season?
Season 2 is where I really kind of felt like I had there was a groove I found. And I think I enjoyed it more because I'd worked out the kinks. I knew what I was doing at that point. And I think I just had a little more fun with it. So, yeah.
Well, if you were hesitant for the season 1 stuff, it sure doesn't show.
Oh, well, thank you.
That's true.
Reba.
Yeah, I would have to agree with Craig that I was kind of stumbling blindly for season 1. And it just so happens that my 3 most favorite episodes are actually in season 2. And Gary teases me about this all the time, one of which is Behold Eck. I'm probably the only one who actually likes Behold Eck.
You're the one.
But there's an Eck behind me.
Hey, I have Eck original art in the other room.
Whoa.
There's a Eck model behind me.
There you go. None of us escapes. None of us escape.
But Behold Eck, Cry of Silence, and Counterweight are my 3 favorite episodes.
Wow.
Yeah, I know.
There's something I didn't
Now
know.
you know why I tease her about that.
No one
Wow.
else has ever said those words in that order before.
Wow.
Not Colonel Barham. Somebody.
All right, you got to draw the line somewhere.
I wanted to
Hey,
get
did
a
I-
track for
that's
Colonel
all right.
Barham.
Did I tell you guys?
No.
Did I tell you guys? I just found the jar from Colonel Barham.
I
With the
saw that
Xanthi
one.
inside.
Yeah, it had a Zanti inside of it. Yeah,
That was what really blew my mind.
yeah,
Yeah, that was crazy.
yeah. It was in the garage of the son of Paul LeBaron, who worked at Project Unlimited. Don LeBaron, his son contacted me, and he goes, "Oh, look at this. Do you think it's worth anything?" You know, oh man.
What are you paying for it, David?
No, I'm not, because of the exigencies of the internet, people dogpiled on this thing, and when last seen, it was up to $7,500.
Oh. Whoa.
But it is a Zanti with actual hair on it still.
Yeah.
Yeah, you did post the picture on the Outer
Well,
Limits.
damn right I posted the
Impressive.
picture. I want everybody to, you know. So
It was very cool.
Gary, any particular time that this lit up for you?
I kind of understand what everyone is saying, that by the time we got around to season 2, we were kind of, you know, a little bit more familiar.
We were like vets and we were strong.
Yeah. However, and ironically, I guess I did enjoy the Cry of Silence one that I did, as Reba was doing her version and I was doing mine.
It is a better episode than people remember it.
Yeah, it's so easy to joke about tumbleweeds, but the truth of the matter is, it's a very well written, tight, little scary story with a great premise for an hour show that had to worry about its budget. You were able to convey a lot of great ideas and a lot of great suspense, spending very, very little money. But I have to say, ultimately, I probably, when you talk about doing a commentary where you sort of get into it, you know, and you're kind of alive with it, I kind of felt I hit that with Architects of Fear. As I was doing it, I was just kind of enjoying it and reveling in it. Even though what happens sometimes when you do these things, you will forget one or two key points to mention, and you hope that whatever else you have said compensates for what you forgot.
No, but in the case of an episode like that, it's a really rich vein to mine, and so you can miss a couple. It's not a big deal.
But I did enjoy doing that one, I have to say.
I always regret that. I should just want to say that I always regret that they didn't cast Ava Gabor in the June Haver role.
Oh my God, she would have been even more hysterical. And I'm gonna go Steve now, and then I'm gonna go backwards around all the people who just talked. So I'm gonna hit Steve with 2 things, and then we're gonna go in reverse.
All right. Well, and I didn't do as many shows as everybody else, so I started out with my favorite episode with my buddy Gary, which was the Zantis. So I just had a great time doing it and revisiting it, and sort of. This goes to that thing about point of view. Gary's point of view about the show sort of helped me think about things, and hopefully maybe I said 1 or 2 things, you know, and helped him think about stuff. But I had no worries. I wasn't worried about getting up to speed. I was more worried about the technology than anything else. But you know, I was thrown into the deep end of the pool with that, but it was exactly where I wanted to be. For me, the tougher one to do was The Inheritors, because it was 2 parts. And it was 2 parts with a limited amount of sets, very little location work.
And you got to talk for 90 minutes.
And you got to talk, yeah. So you're doing basically a feature, which is not helping you with lots of stuff to react to. But one of the things that was nice for me about doing that was that episode is a surprise kind of episode in a lot of ways. The bad guys are really the good guys, and you know, the threat is benign, not lethal. And it was just really nice talking to Gary about this in a deeper way than maybe he and I would have talked about had we been out having lunch or something. So right. The enjoyment factor I got out of doing that was sort of re-examining a really good show on a deeper level. To me, Zantis is like one of the great United Artists 1950 science fiction movies that, you know, like maybe like I said, United Artists would have done in that monster that challenged the world period. So that's really my meat. As a little boy, I was attached to the show because of the monsters. I'm happy to say that. So, but The Inheritors was different for me, and in a good way.
You'll find that a lot of people have memories of specific episodes of this show in the way that they have memories of 50 science fiction movies. They really remember them as kind of as being features.
Well, the Galaxy Being was that way for me as a viewer.
The Day the Earth Stood Still in mini form. Let's face it. That's kind of what it was.
It's the day the Earth stood still of television.
Yeah.
Right.
And so now Steve, part 2.
Okay.
Sitting here right now with you guys, if we Blu-rays aside, if we get another chance at this, what episode would you like to do a commentary on that you have not done?
I would like to actually talk about Galaxy Being. That was a real sweet spot show for me as a boy.
Both versions.
It doesn't matter.
Okay.
Anything and everything. I really like that. And boy, this is just me being old, but the episode with the rocks that attach to your face, the Robert Paulbeck. That's right. Yeah. That to me was, as a viewer, as a kid, it was the show that gave me nightmares, but also I thought it was so ridiculous on some level, but so real and so human because of Culp and Salome Jens and the filmmaking. So I would love to sort of delve into that one. And I could probably think of a couple of others, but why?
No, just off the top of your head, whatever comes to you, Gary.
Yeah.
Probably Forms of Things Unknown.
Really?
The Thing Unknown, or any combination. I am fascinated. That whole thing that you mentioned, I just want to throw this in. There's talk about maybe David McCallum doing a reading from the script because he played Tone Hobart originally.
That would be great.
Unbelievable. Wow. Let us hope and pray that happens. So I would, if it were up to me, Forms of Things Unknown and The Unknown, and then the other Joe Stefano Fever Dreams, Don't Open Till Doomsday, or Crawled Out of the Wood, the stuff where the plots really don't make sense, but that's not why you're enjoying them. You're enjoying them because you're getting into Stefano's id.
You're watching a show about Joe's analysis.
Oh, which then there's nothing better. Imagine having your fever dreams photographed by Conrad Hall. I mean,
imagine having a whole nother season of shows like that.
Oh, Lord help us, right? Incredible.
Hey, Reba. Nice. Hey, Reba, what do you think?
Hands down, Specimen Unknown.
Really? Why?
Which Craig
I really want to know why.
I'm so angry.
Poor Reba.
I think you all just lost all respect for me right now. That's definitely my 4th favorite episode. And it's just, God, it's so cheesy. Like just the puffed rice coming out of the
Have you listened to Craig's commentary on this show? It was like, because there's a story behind that, which is that I asked Craig to do the Specimen Unknown commentary because on his blog he ripped the shit out of that episode, and I said, I want you to do it almost exactly like that. Now, we don't have to caution each other about the proper level of respect or anything. We're already there. But I want that incendiary approach to it.
Mm-hmm.
Specimen Unknown, man, that's maybe the biggest surprise of the day. Craig, are you prepared to surprise us equally?
This won't be a surprise.
It's going to be Beholdak, isn't it?
It crawled out of the woodwork.
Oh, okay.
And I actually had started working on that, as I recall, but I don't.
Can you refresh me on what happened with that circumstance? We came right up to the edge of it, and then we didn't do it.
I think it was a matter of the whole concept of like Gary said, the Joe Stefano fever dream. I think that we had just sort of kind of covered that in other episodes, so there wasn't enough there for a whole track. But
well, I think that we also did so many Stefano-centric episodes that covered a lot of what he was doing outside the writing of that specific episode, that to continue to do all of them would have been diminishing returns on the research material. How about you, Tim?
It Crawled Out of the Woodwork would be my first choice, but my second choice would be The Mice, which actually was my favorite bear of the whole series. I love that jelly pudding thing, you know.
And somehow I love the permutated music in The Mice better than its original music from Nightmare. it's creepier by 50% more somehow.
Yeah, I just wish that the budget would have extended to us doing more additional commentaries for the second release through Via Vision, because
There was just no time. There was no time.
Yeah.
Well, anything that we didn't cover or that you would like to make as any kind of summary closing statement on this topic, because this may be the only chance we get to do this. So Tim, you go first, if you please.
Well, I was just very pleased to be part of this great project, and to have my work complemented with the work that everyone else did. I think that
we got rondos. We got rondos, ladies and gentlemen.
Whoa, that's true.
You made a beautiful point when you said that everybody's bringing their own unique point of view on to bear on the series, and
it's not the same approach from every commentator.
Yeah, and it really is, to use a handy old word, a very Catholic approach that is pretty rewarding, I think, to the experience of watching the programs. And they, because they were shot on 35 millimeter, I mean, they really do look better than they ever have. So I'm
very happy with the set. Yeah.
Oh yeah, looks great.
Craig.
I mean, it's a huge honor to have been part of this. Just a humble blogger, podcaster. I don't
not
have
anymore.
I don't have some of the industry cred.
Now you're a film historian. You're stuck in the boat with us, man.
Rondo.
Now you're famous.
Rondo winning film historian.
Yeah. Look at all the work it's led to. If ever there was a time for this kind of work during quarantine, like I could be doing, like knocking these out every day.
Oh yeah.
No, it was a joy. It's one of those things where never thought I could do something like that. So yeah, just a glowing appreciation that I feel, and to be in company of all of you is.
Well, I was thinking that, for better or worse, it's like we now have a record of this among ourselves, which is a pleasant thing to have, and a possible supplement for a future DVD review. Really. Reba.
I mean, I know what both Tim and Craig said. For me, coming from academia, I spend so much time talking about the stuff that I love to people who could probably care less about it. And so for me, being able to share a love of something that I know a lot about with people who are equally as passionate about it as I am, is just really very fulfilling. Knowing that, I mean, I don't know how many people have ever read my book, but people will listen to the DVD commentaries. And so, and so just knowing that people care, people are interested in this sort of thing, and will actually listen to it and take the time to listen and enjoy it probably as much as I enjoyed putting it together.
And also people are saying now's your chance to go on the record.
Right. Yeah.
Gary.
Well, The Outer Limits is part of my life. It's always been a part of my life ever since it came on. And now that once the age of DVDs and Blu-rays came along, what a great opportunity, as you say, to put everything on the record, to convey your emotions about this show, how it affected you. Those of us who are monster kids from the 60s, the show resonates in a very, very special way. The show was created as an answer to what we wanted. I think that's why it really, really, really connects deeply. And the fact that we can all be a part of the wonderful presentation of these episodes, it's a dream come true. Maybe someday we'll get a 4K UHD version of The Outer Limits. But in the meantime, these Blu-rays are gorgeous.
And this panel will then be a supplement on that Blu-ray. You watch, you watch.
Isn't it a wonderful thrill to be able to speak over Frontier's closing theme? I mean, when you can really feel like
it's nuts, yeah. Because instead of saying next week at the same time, it's like you're actually. And I would do that in commentaries too. I would go, I got 40 seconds left.
Yeah.
I have 6 pages of material.
Yeah.
So on my commentaries, particularly on the season 1 one where I was really flying by the seat of my pants. It sounds like I just did 2 huge rails of coke right at the end. And that's not electronics. That's me, Steve.
Yeah.
Please,
Listen,
me.
I was just happy to be roped into the project. I love old television. I like talking about television, and sadly enough, the 60s are now kind of a long time ago. And I was just happy to be part of a project that kind of reminded people why this show was good and worthwhile and worth watching, and maybe, just maybe, help people to say, hey, I should look at this that way, or maybe I should pay a little more attention to the lighting, or maybe I should listen to the music a little harder. So yeah, it's a great show. It's a show from my kidhood that I was always enormously fond of, and it was great to be part of this project and to work in my own small way with all the rest of you. So thanks for having me be a member of the team.
Has everybody here seen The Color of Money?
Yeah, long time ago.
Martin
Paul Newman
Scorsese
picture?
sequel
Quite a while,
to,
but yeah.
sequel to The Hustler.
Yeah. Oh,
Right?
yeah.
I just watched The Color of Money again the other night. You know what I realized? I'm older right now than Paul Newman is in that movie.
Oh boy.
Was there
I'm
a
older
reason
than
why
Roger
you brought
Moore
this
was.
up, David? Thank
I'm
you for
older than
reminding
Roger
us.
Moore was in his last Bond film.
Yeah, I think Roger Moore was like 90. It was like something like
Yeah.
that. So,
But you know something? Look at all of us. We still have the kid alive in us.
Yeah.
So we're still kids. We're still monster kids.
I have the kid in a bondage cage out in the garage. Listen, thank
Hopefully
you guys so
beat
much.
him.
I am so glad that we had a chance to kind of stamp this into immortality this way. And I'd like to thank all you guys for making the time to do it and showing up on time, being timely, and not swearing as much as me, which is like really good. And